Hi, so welcome to Section 2, Lecture 4. In the last section, we talked in greater detail about the circadian rhythm and how to align our ideal day to match the circadian rhythm. We figured out how this process is taking place, how our internal body clock affects how we feel, and some different behaviors as far as what actions we should take at high points and low points within our circadian rhythm. In this lecture, lecture 4, we're going to talk about some other important rhythms that we need to understand, and these play an influential role in the sleeping and waking cycle. And I'm just going to provide you with the roadmap for each of these rhythms, and that way, once we understand that, we'll be able to figure out how to exactly what's going on. Basically, we can break this process down and then really kind of modify it and facilitate what we want. So I'm going to introduce you to the first one that is called brain waves. And I'm going to show you a couple of graphs. These are as monitored by an electroencephalograph, an EEG, which monitors brain rhythms. And the other one is called ultradian rhythms. Now these differ from circadian rhythms because they're rhythms that occur several times during a 24-hour period. All right, the first one, brain waves. Now, as we covered earlier, alternating periods of sleeping and wakefulness are as simple as moving from one frequency of brain waves to another. These four types of brain waves are beta, alpha, theta, and delta. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the four frequencies of waves. The first frequency is called beta waves, and if you look at the top of the chart, you'll see this as B. These are short, high-frequency waves. This is akin to when we're awake, we're alert, active, maybe it's slightly anxious at this point. So basically, the brainwaves are moving very quickly. The second type are called alpha waves. These are longer, drawn out, slower. And we can actually move from beta to alpha pretty well by ourselves if we simply engage in like a deep rest with our eyes closed, if we just simply relax on the couch, if we practice meditation. It's even been shown that prayer can influence our brainwave patterns. Some other ways to do it are breathing exercises, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So I want you to know that it's not possible to go from beta straight to delta. We have to go through these four frequencies of waves. So to fall asleep, we need to go from beta into alpha and then into theta. Now, when we go to alpha, that's something that we can consciously control, and that's kind of like the preparation for sleep, where we start to feel drowsy. We all know that feeling. And that moves us into theta, which is the next stage, the next frequency of waves, and these are much slower and longer than alpha. By this point, we're already asleep. This is light sleep, and later, after we go into delta, we're also going to come back to theta, and that's for REM sleep, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But theta is basically, we're asleep, basically we can be awakened at this point. It's pretty easy to wake us during light sleep. But once we go into delta, then we're very close to being in a coma. It's very difficult to wake up from delta. These are really long, slow waves. This is what we experience when we're in deep non-REM sleep, and it's really difficult to wake somebody who's experiencing delta brain waves, who's in deep non-REM sleep, and definitely not a good idea. So if you ever wake up, if you ever go from delta and straight back to beta, you're gonna feel really, really strange. You're gonna feel like really groggy, like you're gonna be like dizzy for a while. It's gonna take a while to catch up because you jump from being in deep non-REM sleep to high-frequency beta waves so quickly. Now, I just want to show you this chart because these are the different stages of sleep, and just to compare, as you can see at the top, that's wakefulness. Those are high-frequency beta waves. Non-REM sleep are these deep delta waves, and then REM sleep are known as alpha waves. So it's very close to being waking. And REM sleep, which we're going to talk a little bit more about later, is called paradoxical sleep. And we'll talk about more why that is in the next lecture. Okay, so next is the ultradian rhythms. Now, these are the cycles of sleep. They each last about 90 minutes. And during an ultradian cycle, we usually go from a short brainwave to deep brainwave. and we go back again. So we go from light sleep down to deep sleep and then back again, all within 90 minutes, within a 90-minute cycle. Now we're going to take a look at this chart and really kind of dig into this concept. And if you look at here, we're looking at a graph that shows sleep between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. So 7 hours. If you take 5 90-minute cycles, that equals 7.5 hours. But if you look at the top left, you're going to see we're at a period of wakefulness, and then we transition into light non-REM sleep, and there's 2 different stages of that. And then we go into deep non-REM sleep, and then there's 2 different stages of that. But if you look at this chart, it's really interesting because the distribution of sleep is not even. You'll see that the highest concentration of deep non-REM sleep occurs in the first 2 cycles, and then it's almost non-existent in the later cycles. So that's really the most essential form of sleep, and we're going to talk about that in the next lecture a little bit more. But it's the form of sleep that the body prioritizes first. And the other thing that you'll notice is that we go through almost all of the stages in every single cycle. So it's continually going back and forth, but we keep going through light non-REM sleep as like the bridge that bridges the gap between REM sleep and deep non-REM sleep. Now, third, you'll notice that the highest concentration of REM sleep occurs in the final cycles before waking, between say 4 a.m. to 6:30 a.m., just before we wake up, and that's usually when we experience dreams. So if we wake up immediately after REM sleep, we can often recall our dreams. And the next thing you'll notice is that we always transition back to light sleep in between cycles. And again, this is all occurring parallel to our circadian rhythm. So there are certain substances that disappear, like adenosine, during sleep, during these hours, and other ones that start to increase, such as cortisol, in the later cycles of sleep to help us wake up. So the substances that are responsible for making us fall asleep either disappear or become something else which makes us awake, which converts to waking up. Now, if you're looking at this chart, you don't really understand it. I didn't quite get it the first time either. I make it really simple for you here. So it's almost like cars on a train, right? So we start at the top left, light sleep, deep non-REM, back into light sleep, then into REM sleep, and then back into light sleep, deep non-REM, light sleep, REM, light sleep, deep non-REM, and so on and so forth. And you'll also see that light sleep is sort of the intermediary. It's the thing that bridges the gap between stages of deep non-REM sleep and REM sleep. And we experience it through every single cycle. So it's at the top of the cycle, we go down again, and then go back up again. And we're going to discuss each stage of sleep and its role in the next lecture. So please continue to lecture 5, and thank you for watching lecture 4. I'll see you in the next one.